Welcome back. A very good morning to one and all present here for a sixth day, 11th session of FDP Phase-I. Albertson said, research is to see what everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. With this, I, Deepa K.R., Assistant Professor, Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, feel privileged to welcome you all on behalf of Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering for AICTE-sponsored two-week online faculty development program on fostering ethics, moral values, and character building in technical education from 23rd November to 5th December 2020, organized by Mechatronics Department SVCE. It's a great pleasure to have Dr. Lata M.S. Ma'am, Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, SVCE, Bengaluru, here with us as a resource person. Ma'am is going to deliver a talk on key to research plagiarism. It's a great honor for me to introduce such an eminent personality today. Dr. Lata M.S. Ma'am, currently working as a professor in Department of Civil Engineering at Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering, has 17 years of experience in teaching and research at IISc, holds a BE and ME Structural Engineering from Bangalore University and PhD from the top institute, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. The area of interest includes sustainable materials, composite, machinery behavior, earthquake analysis, microanalysis study of concrete. She has published more than 30 papers in national and international Scopus journals and conferences, and has been reviewer of the most prior Journal of the Materials in Civil Engineering, a fringe publication. She is a life member of ISTE, ICI, IEI, and a member of IEEE. The major achievements of her career are: firstly, Ma'am has received a prestigious award for Research Publication Award from VGST, Government of Karnataka. Secondly, Ma'am has received a grant of rupees 20 lakh amount from VGST, Government of Karnataka, a scheme on KFIST 2019. And lastly, she has published and received a first examination report from Government of India, Patent Office on the innovation of innovative building product, and received a grant from Government of India. With this brief introduction, I take this opportunity to welcome ma'am on behalf of management, and on my own behalf, I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Now I request Dr. Lata ma'am to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I hope the screen is visible, ma'am.
Not it, ma'am.
It's not visible?
Yeah, now it's visible.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Deepa ma'am, for a good introduction. At first, I congratulate the Department of Mechatronics for organizing ASIT sponsored two-week online FTP fostering ethics, moral values, and character building in technical education. I also thank the team members and the department for inviting me as a resource person today. I myself, Lata from Department of Civil Engineering, here to present a talk on key to research plagiarism. So already been told as a research is an innovation. Everybody here, we do research. Everyday activities are research. I can call it as a research work. But when it comes to a publication, research has to be well defined, And so the research, I'm talking with relation to plagiarism. Research work has to be published. So before publication, it has to undergo plagiarism. A plagiarism is a bitter word for me as an individual. It is a bitter word. Why? Because I would like to share my experience. I would like to share my experience when I took up my undergraduate. My professor, who was a guide for a project, was always advising all of us not to share your content of your project, not to discuss with all others. We were astonished why the advisor was advising this way. As a friend or a classmates in the undergraduate level, we used to discuss and share. but later we could not understand what happened with that, really. But when I moved on for the post graduation, there also my guru, my professor, the guide who was with me was always advising, do not leave out the concept, do not leave out the concept what you're doing. Then also it was repetitive for me, I could not get what was actually it was all about. So firstly I thought, yes, I should not discuss, okay, I'll follow my guru. So when I started my work for post graduation with a project or a research related, so all the topics were studied under literature and thoroughly been understood and grounded, and finally it was the outcome what I got from the research. So my guru, my professor asked me to publish a paper. So while publishing a paper, I had to acknowledge each and every work of others where I've taken it. For the writing the paper, I had to acknowledge it, and acknowledging, and finally I could conclude the research work of my post graduation. There I don't know what happened. Finally I published, sorry, I didn't publish, I had to submit for the publication, but the review I got with a plagiarism problem. Again there was a plagiarism as a problem. Then it was a little biased, I was a little biased. What happened where that concept got leaked up? So there is some confusion. We cannot find out, we cannot track what could be the possibility of leaving out the objective of our work. So finally that stage I crossed. Then with continued with the research, there I understood, really I understood what happened. It's a plagiarism. Then only I got to understand the word, the bitterness of plagiarism plays a vital role in a research. So with this concept, because plagiarism was a new word for me to start in the undergraduate level and post graduation level, but with an experience I really understood what real plagiarism is. With that I would like to move ahead about the PPT. So here also I acknowledge all the references what I have taken for the presentation. Sources of images, reference, citation for quotations, paraphrase materials are provided. So I really tell you that no plagiarism has taken place in the presentation of PPT. I acknowledge each and every phrases what I picked up from the journal papers. Now, this is a session review. What I'll be talking about, it is very general, talking about terminology and the different types, how to avoid, what are the methods we have to, and where to adopt a proper quotations, proper citations has to be made, and some discussion we can have a question and answer, right, with respect to this. Now, coming to the slide, which is talking about more of plagiarism, copyright, and fair use. Three important particular words: plagiarism, copyright, and fair use. Plagiarism is ultimately we are telling that is this copying. We have to not do it. We have to do not do it is I should tell that I should not do it. When I say that I should not do it, definitely the other will follow me. Definitely the other will follow me, right? That is plagiarism my today's talk. Then copyright. When what happens during a copyright, we publish a book and we acknowledge, and or stating that any material copied from this material has to be acknowledged from the author. So without that acknowledgement I am not supposed to take any material for my work from that book or article or any of the volume. Similarly, what is a fair use? For the education purpose, we have to take some of the materials which are being as a result got from the research to be adopted or to be inculcated into the knowledge of students. Some, that is a law being allowed to use some of the concepts of the books or the papers. So it is with the permission what we got it as fair use, but fair use cannot be completely thoroughly I can copy it down. So with these three words we have to understand completely in detail what is plagiarism and origin of it. So this is a Latin word, plagium, which originally means theft or kidnapping. Theft or kidnapping a child or a slave for the purpose of services to be taken. So for this definition by Malone 1989, he gave a word as a literally theft, which evolved as a Latin word as plagium, or today in English word we call it as a plagiarism. In 17th century, it emerged in the meaning of literary theft, that is approximation of literary text, which is being mentioned by Malone 1989. Malone 1989 was the person, was the founder for plagiarism, because the research is not today's work. It is least back and go back and back decades back. The research has started, and today we are just following it up with new research being taken up. So keeping in this mind, what does the definition means as a theft or kidnapping? Now, this is a clear definition which has been taken from the PDF document, which has been stated as a link given in the PPT. And you can see two pictures. One is copying down, plagiarism, the act of presenting another's work or ideas as your own. As your own, we are taking the copying down and stating or citing our name against to that, again, though it is not our work. There it falls. Ethics and morality has to be incorporated in the individual. We follow at some point, we may not. So that is called as ethics and or morality we have to follow, within which the research has to be carried out. So, to generally, plagiarism is an act of stealing someone else's work and attempt to pass it off as your own. So, just taking away from somebody's and putting your name under that is wrong, which is called as a plagiarism. And this can also apply to anything. I'm not talking only to the preface of publications. It is wide open to photographs or songs or any ideas, any drama, any scripts, anything. It is open to all. It is not limited to only research. My dear participants, it is not only limited. Plagiarism is applied. You watch movies, you say this movie is resembling that. That is also a plagiarism. It's a offense. It's an offense. When we copy something, it's an offense, what we call it as. So plagiarism really plays a very big role, especially in research, because of all doing 3 years 4 years research, and we try to publish, and finally we got to know that somebody else has taken away our work, is not possible, is not possible with that. So we have to know what is plagiarism. So I really request all the universities, and even though few universities are doing it, are really doing it, to introduce the word of plagiarism as a subject. Suppose in our VTU University, we have research methodology which has been incorporated about plagiarism. But at undergraduate level or at any other study level, I tell you that it is my personal advice or opinion given to incorporate what is plagiarism, so that people understand how to come out of the plagiarism. So, plagiarism, it also means approximation. I cannot just tell that, okay, if it is some 80% of value, I cannot appropriate to 79.99. It is also a plagiarism. If I get a value of 80%, I cannot put it as 80.111%. No, not at all. No approximation is allowed. Even that approximation is under the banner of plagiarism, under the banner of plagiarism. Plagiarism means the approximation of another person's ideas, process, results, or without appropriate credit. You appropriate and you don't credit the person, credit the author, the particular author who has done that work, then it undergoes as a plagiarism. Approximation means using or taking something that is not yours, not at all yours. You are just taking, but you have to acknowledge. When you are taking something, you have to acknowledge definitely. So plagiarism is one more definition, is stealing by using another person's word or ideas. Plagiarism is academically dishonest, definitely, because students, scholars, and faculty members are expected to do their own work. So we are doing our own work. We are doing a someone can be anyone. I'm not telling someone, it can be anyone. So we have to be honest at our work, at our duties to submit. Now, coming to copyright. So, there is always a bias. There is a bias of terminologies between what is copyright and a plagiarism. Always there is a confusion. Is a plagiarism is the same of copyright, or copyright is a plagiarism? No, they are two different things. Copyright has to be understood. It's a law based. You are putting a defense, or sorry, cover to the publication of any article or a book, whatever you have made. You're protecting it by putting an act of law by providing the law of United States. Actually, participants, it's a US which has recommended. Later it flows to the definite countries. The authors of original work of authorship, original. If you suppose, you can check back into any book, reference books or textbooks. Most commonly if we find regularly on the reference book, copyright. There's a paragraph in the first or second page, a copyright. A copyright has been amended to this book so that nobody is supposed to copy. If you are supposed to take the concept, take the lines of it or the phrases of it, you have to take a writing letter from the author stating that you are allowed to take it. So which includes literally, dramatic, musical, artistic, and certain other intellectual works. So copyright is not, it is put up on a law that you are not supposed to, and this protection is both for published and unpublished works according to copyright of US office. So it is both for both unpublished and published work. It accumulates. Now, what is fair use? So I was talking before this, that is for to give a knowledge or to gain knowledge, give a knowledge or gain knowledge or talk about the knowledge, we should have some limited permission to look back into the regular or the actual work or take up the work of whatever the research has done, right? So there's an act of fair use. Fair use is an act under copyright law that allows the limited portion of the work, limited, that has copyright without having to have permission from the original author, without having permission from the original author. So limited portion, not the complete limited portion. It was created only for the purpose of education and research, nothing else. It was only created for the purpose of education and research. So fair use should be fair use, not more than more than that. It cannot be more than that. So three different things: plagiarism, copyright, and fair use. So one should be clear with that. What is plagiarism, copyright, and fair use? So moving further, let us talk about different types of plagiarism. I have taken some pictures which are available. So most commonly, I already have told what is a plagiarism. It's the simplest meaning is copying. Copying, if you copy someone else's work and put your name on it, it has been called as a plagiarized. So you can see some banners and some photos. You can see in the second picture, it's a Xerox. You're putting as a Xerox of it. You are just duplicating the work of somebody's. So research is ethics. Misconduct should not happen, and fabrication, plagiarism, and falsification should not happen. Should not at all include, the research should not at all include all these criteria into the work. So one should be honest. Of course, definitely we are all honest. At some point, such a type of mistake happens. So this is a first type of plagiarism, which we call it as a copying. Copying is a first type of plagiarism. An example I can give you, a pretty well good example. We have one book called as Dr. Baul is the author for one of the book, and I directly copy the material from the Dr. Baul book and do not acknowledge the person, even though I copy some words, some lines from the book or the reference book, but I definitely forget, I cannot tell, I don't acknowledge in any way. Then Dr. Baul, it was Dr. Baul's work, then what I should tell? The writer has committed plagiarism. The writer has committed plagiarism. This should not happen. I should have to acknowledge the person for the work, what the work or the real author has done. A splendid work has done, and I'm taking that work into for my research reference, then I definitely have to acknowledge. Should not copy. I have to acknowledge. These are the pictures which have been telling that, stressing that you have to acknowledge. You should not copy. You have to acknowledge. Now, this is the another type of plagiarism, that is patchwork plagiarism. Patchwork plagiarism. It's similar to copying also. Like you take complete phrases and clauses from the original resources and started viewing them into the own writing. This is also the definition taken by McConnell Library, Radford University, without putting the phrases in quotation marks or citing the author. You have to cite the author, or you have to tell where you have taken. Similarly, what I have done in the lines, from where I have taken, I'll acknowledge the person. Similarly, we should not stitch, or should not change the lines. Change the lines is grammar, all that. You cannot put it upside down. We cannot do it. That is called as patchwork plagiarism. So such type of patchwork plagiarism should be completely avoided, because when we, dear participants, when we start research, we will be in our own world. We will be in our own world with all our new things coming into your mind, and we start writing. We should not start writing to the end. At the middle part, or 3 months results, of 6 months results, we should keep accumulating and immediately start writing, because a day will come where we'll forget things. So, and we just look back to the work and what somebody has said, no, I cannot get back the things. So what I advise any research who is doing, I advise that at every interval of 3 months or 6 months, it is very good practice of writing down the paragraph of the results what they have obtained, so that results what they have obtained together, they can put it as into a report. That can be into a report. Therefore, that will end benefit, because it's not possible for us to remember. Especially, I'm from civil engineering background. We work in the laboratory. We keep working. We keep doing the test in the laboratory. So everything has to be recorded manually. Then it has to be brought into the computerized form. So every attempt should be made that you have to sit and write in the book. That is a practice I do, asking my scholars or myself, writing that in the record of a book, then transferring that into a computerized or the machine form, right? That should be the practice. Therefore, I can make up the English corrections, I can make up the any numerical corrections. Then if there is a numerical corrections to be made, immediately I'll go back to the laboratory and redo the test and find out the exact value which has to be counted. Right, that should be the practice to be maintained. Therefore, what happens, the flow of research is continuous in my mind. The flow of, if I keep doing the test continuously one after the other, and I don't record it, and right, only recording is not important, writing is important. Putting that entire result in a form of a paragraph is important. Though it may not directly go into your final report, that will go into a one form in your report. So I advise this to take up, right? So without putting the phrases in quotation marks or citing the author. Next, third type of plagiarism is paraphrasing plagiarism. This is paraphrasing plagiarism is like you have the paragraph, you write it in a different form. You write it in a different form. This occurs when plagiarizer paraphrases or summarizes another work without citing the sources. Without citing, again, we forget, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, we forget to cite the source. Even changing the words or letter or using synonyms. Most of the students, they do using synonyms, but retaining the author's essential thoughts. Please keeping the same concept, but changing the lines, sentences, restructure, style without citing the source is still considered as plagiarism. So this is also called as a plagiarism, which should not be done. So paraphrasing, you just put a synonym to one word and reform, restructure, everything it is being done, but again you call it as a plagiarism because the concept remains the same. Whatever you do, jumble up everything, the structure, the concept, the base of it will remain the same. Who has found that? The real author has already found this concept, and you cannot claim for it. You cannot get a credit for it. It has his work, so we cannot claim for any credit. Again, this will be considered as a plagiarism. It will be considered as a plagiarism. That is the third type of plagiarism. The first type is copying. The second type is, sorry, the second type is patchwork plagiarism, and the third type is paraphrasing plagiarism. And we can give a very good example here. One of the paper by Ward et al. 2006, some paper referring that I have made this plagiarized patchwork. Findings indicate that media content is not uniformly negative. This is a line given in the Ward et al. paper, journal paper. Information about sexual health, risk and thoughts, decision making is sometimes present. So this is the exact actual work given by the Ward et al. Right? When it is being plagiarized, when it is taken by somebody else, let us see how they write. Right? According to Ward et al. 2006, media content is not all negative. See how beautifully it is being reframed. And information is sometimes present concerning sexual health, risk, and thoughtful decision making. So it is been taken in the other form, but it is been rearranged, patch written, plagiarized. It is also an example of a plagiarism. Fine. Now, this is what really comes as unintentional plagiarism. Unintentional plagiarism. What is this? I do things. And now, as a teacher, when we ask students, "Sir, ma'am, we don't know. We didn't, unintentionally we did." Never they say that intentionally we did. Right? So, this we call it as fourth type of plagiarism, unintentional plagiarism. Even thought I listed my references, I did not cite them throughout the paper. Even thought I listed my references. Even you have listed in the references, but you have not cited in the throughout the paper. Remember, research students, scholars, right? We when you publish, we have to cite them in the paper contest. We have to cite them, right? So unintentional plagiarism, it occurs when the writer incorrectly quotes, incorrectness is involved, or incorrectly cites a source they are using, right? So incorrect is a word which should not be avoided. It should be avoided. So we should cite, we should refer, when you are referring, you have to cite in the context of the paper. How is this plagiarism? If the author didn't mean to do it, unintentional, how I can call it as plagiarism, you can ask. Yes, it is a plagiarism. It is a plagiarism. How is this plagiarism? This is a one slide. Also, we don't read minds. We don't know what you mean to do it. If a writer has incorrectly quoted, correct, or incorrectly cited its source, it could be misconstructed or dishonesty on the writer part. The dishonest usage of another work is most often considered plagiarism. Therefore, the incorrect usage of another work, whether it is intentionally or not, could be treated as real plagiarism. So, your intentionally or unintentional doesn't come into picture. If you are done, it is a plagiarism. That's a real plagiarism, what has happened. So we cannot tell that. We cannot tell such a reason that I did unintentionally. We have to cite every author work in the paper publication or any article, any book writer. This is the fifth type of idea plagiarism, right? So here what happens, we have different ideas. Every day we get ideas. Okay, this must not be existing. Chalo, I'll do this today. This type of idea is a very new concept. Let me introduce. Let me go for a plagiarism. Then I put a copyright for it. So I'll be thinking at my table. You can see a picture. I'm thinking at a table, and somebody in the back, he steals away. He steals away. Similarly, two friends or two classmates or two of them are sitting together. One is getting an idea, one is getting an idea of some new concept. But at the same time, you can see at the surrounding somebody is taking away that idea. So there is real ethics and moral which plays, because I should be having that ethics. I should, when I say that I follow those things, then definitely other will follow. I cannot tell that other to follow, and no, it is not at all good statement. I should follow the ethics, then definitely others will follow. So the fifth type is idea plagiarism occurs when you present an idea from another source without citing the author and year, isn't it? Without citing. Now you have some idea, you have to propose an idea, right? You have to publish that idea. So how do you do it? And that idea has been originated at some other place. So you have to acknowledge, or if it is a new idea where it is not been found anywhere in the literature, not at all being seen in the literature, definitely you need not acknowledge anybody. You can claim that is your own idea. Anytime you write about a concept or idea in a paper without including in and in text citation, you're claiming that it is your own idea. If it is not, then it is a plagiarism. Then it is a plagiarism. So that is an idea plagiarism. So totally you find different types of plagiarism. So this is what we understood: some definition of plagiarism, definition of copyright, definition of fair use. Then we understood different types of plagiarism. This minimum knowledge of plagiarism is required for anybody to go ahead. And further, the most blatant form of idea plagiarism occurs. This is very common practice because our students are very young, right? When students see a good argument or idea in a paper and then represent that argument or idea as their own, definitely, isn't it? They would have seen it, they would have come across, and they claim that is our idea. No. So that should not happen. A more common form of idea plagiarism is when students cite a source incorrectly. Correct now? If my the idea is been evident in 2005 and the cited in the year of 2005, it is very wrong, incorrectly. The sources have been incorrectly cited because they do not follow proper in-text citation guidelines. So one has to understand what is the proper in-text citation guidelines. There are many books, many references, many manuals being available as described in chapter 8 of publication manual. Publication manual is available easily on the Google. You can find it as a PDF copy and look back to the chapter 8 where they really describe about the idea plagiarism. Now, yes, this is really it comes here. What is how to avoid such a plagiarisms are there? How to avoid? How to avoid is avoiding plagiarism is quite simple, right? So on the you can see two pictures where they are telling that I must not copy and avoid plagiarism by academic integrity, honest, like something that. So best method for avoiding is to simply be honest. Simply be honest, and when you have used a source in your paper, you have to give some credit has to be given. Only credit money, you have to include their names. That style you have to follow. The journal, every journal has different method of citations to be included along to the text of your paper, right? So it can be within the bracket author followed with the year. Acknowledge the author of the original work you have used. So this is a definite way of avoid plagiarism. Once your journal publication, whatever you have you want to publish, and if you have taken all this care, definitely your paper will be published in no time. Because most of the time what happens, I've seen with papers are getting stuck when you are not cited with proper citation has not taken up. The results you have focused very well, you have given a result evaluation, everything completely you have given, but at some point when you try to publish it, the reviewer would have sent some comments telling that there is a overlapping, some weightage of percentages already existing and all that. When it happens, when you are not cited that work of some other authors in your paper, neatly or clearly, telling that this work is already existing in which author paper, mentioning the author and the name. Most of the time, it is a common mistake of any writer who does this, right? So further, another way to avoid plagiarism is to use your own work as often as your as often as possible. Definitely. So it should be possible because 3 or 4, 5 years we'll be working in the laboratory for the research, right? So 3 to 4, 5 years we have work means we have our own work, our own ideas, our own methods to claim for that is called as a which is away from the plagiarism. Definitely there is a purity in the research. Definitely there is a purity. There is no plagiarism attack on that. So quoting and citing sources is usually required and inevitable when doing research. So it is not that you cannot avoid such things. Quoting and citing has to be done. It's a must. Though you, as a starter, when you start the publication, going to the papers, when your guide, your professors, your guru will ask, you go through this paper and come back to me. I may not follow the lines, then you have to look back to the original author paper where the work has been carried out. So that is how you gain the knowledge, that is how you build up the knowledge. So quoting and citing sources is usually required and inevitable when doing research. That is how you back up your own work. So that is how you back up your own work. But using someone else's work excessively can be constructed as a plagiarism. So it is, again I'm telling, requesting not to use, but you have to quote. Another way is to quote and cite your sources properly. That is very much important. So further to continue, how to avoid plagiarism. So this is only a small gist I'm telling about while writing a paper. Now you carry out the research. Now if you have some work of 3 to 4 years of work, your research is such a valuable thing. Frequently, whenever you get a result of it, a part by part, you can keep publishing your paper. So when you are writing a paper, you should keep in mind writing a paper which is free from plagiarism will make sure the reviewers that the paper the researchers write is free from copying or quoting someone's paper. Once the researchers have proven to be plagiarizer or illegal writer, please be conscious about these lines. Once the researchers have proven to be a plagiarizer or an illegal writer, it will be difficult for the researchers to convince them that the writer did not do it intentionally. So once you prove yourself that you are under plagiarism, it is very difficult to come out of it. It is very difficult to come out of it. It is very difficult to convince. So again, you resubmit the paper to the same journal. It is not possible to happen. It is not possible because the first impression is lost. Every time the writer finished writing a paper, what the writer must do is checking it using the checker application. Definitely nowadays we have a number of softwares available with us, and we can definitely pass the paper through that plagiarism checker and find out what is the amount of plagiarism has been taken place, not with respect to words, right? The writer must use it online, namely by using an internet access to use as checker application. Now there are a number of books. I advise each and everybody here to go through these books, which will really guide you to publish in Scopus Index journal papers. Right, that is most essential because as a starter, how to cite the papers is very difficult. So if you have good enough of time, you may find at the time books. You may find many more journal papers also. You can always refer to it, and you can make your writing free from the plagiarism. And let us talk. There's a small brief story of it, and this is also has been picked up picked up, and there are like the short stories like this. You can read the table also, summary of the play table, what is being provided. There are two papers which were reviewed by the researchers, right? Or the reviewer himself as a researcher. The table is an example of the plagiarism of scan report taken. I've taken some example like that. So report generated in August 2017, and plagiarism status is 47%, which is unique. So remaining is not so. And total words was 848 words, and total characters is so and so, right? So the table is an example of the plagiarism scan report. The writer must take as a reviewer. So he himself should also act as a reviewer. The writer must act as a reviewer to find out a method or technique to ease the writer. As journal reviewer is reviewing or reading the abstract and introduction of the papers, right? So the writer should be, as a reviewer, should look back. The method of reviewing that writer applies is by using plagiarism checker. So definitely they use, any journals when you submit, they use a plagiarism checker to find out what is a plagiarism status. Further, the table below is the same table telling about, shows the writer of the has was only able to show the uniqueness of his or under paper under 47%, but remaining 50%, 53% is not at all having originality. Of course, in general, it can be categorized to be an unsuitable paper to be published anywhere. So this is again taken from the paper being mentioned here. So and they are telling that it is not unsuitable word is a review comment what we receive. So such a worst case we should not undergo. So this will definitely stop us to publish our paper at any other journals. So one should be very careful, and before submitting we have to pass this paper under checkers, under plagiarism checker as a software. But plagiarism checker should be also the smart one you should use, not the regular one, because I heard some plagiarism checkers will copy down the work, right? So moving further, how many percent of plagiarism is tolerated by the editor team? So one can ask, what is the percentage of plagiarism is allowed? Yes, depends on the journal editor. Is a editor is the topmost person in the journal who will give the final decision. This is a person, authorized person, who will decide everything in the journal. And is depending on the different type of journals available, we feel if 25% is to be tolerated, uniqueness should be 75%. But when it is a writer's own research, of course the writer must revise it to be 100% unique, 100% free from plagiarism. So you find some journals which they allow 20%, 20 to 30%, or 40% also some plagiarism is allowed, and finding out what is the amount of uniqueness, that should be careful. But when if it is your own idea, it should be free from 100%. 100% uniqueness should be there. So it should be 100% free from plagiarism. So how should the researcher do it if some statements or phrases were found as a part of plagiarism? What should be done? What should it be done? So the best way is to rewrite to minimize from having plagiarism. So I remember my professor telling, because when I start writing in first paper, when I was a researcher, he was just going through as of draft one. Professor was to write draft one. It used to go to 10 draft. Final publication phrase, final of paper, final paper which has to publish or submit for publication will be of draft 12. So that many iterations it undergoes. So because if guru and shishya sit together, we can reduce the amount of plagiarism. Though it is our own work, but while writing, some duplication may happen. So to overcome that, it is advisable to go through it again and again. Repeatedly, one has to sit and go through it. Then only it is possible. So it depends. The best way is to rewrite to minimize from having plagiarism. After being revised, try again though, recheck it to make sure that it is good enough to be a scientific paper. Yes, it has to be a scientific paper because it should be a paper for somebody else to take up the research. It should provide some scope for others to take up. So that should be a base or a scientific paper for others. So the journal writing paper should be that accurate, that precise, should be free from 100% of plagiarism. There's one more story which I've taken from elsewhere publications. This is very nice story. We can go through it. So there are two authors, right? Let me call it as author Alpha and Beta contacted the publisher elsewhere to complain their paper A. So authors Alpha and Beta contacted the publisher elsewhere to complain about their paper A. A study, which is a study of a particular regional product which had been published in elsewhere journal A. So alpha, beta, two researcher people, they have published the paper A in journal A. Had been published almost verbatim by an online journal. Verbatim, the same has been taken, copied by an online journal B by authors Gamma and B Delta. By authors Gamma and Delta, they have taken same journal of journal A into the form of journal B. But it was online journal, right? Yes, definitely. Nowadays everything is online. Gamma and Delta substituted a different country and named that the one used by authors Alpha and Beta. So they substituted everything. This is an example quoting just to understand the concept. Gamma and Delta substituted a different country name than the one used by the authors Alpha and Beta. And although they substituted different numbers throughout the text of paper B, whatever the numbers, the work numbers they had, the test results they had, they all substituted, but they could not substitute the table figures, changes in the figures. They failed to change the figures used one in the tables, retaining the data used in paper A. They also failed to cite author alpha and beta, the previous researchers. So these are the mistakes they what they did. So they copied online, they duplicated the same thing, call it a journal B, a gamma and delta, the authors, change the country name, just duplicated everything, change whatever maximum they could do it, they do it, and but they forget to, or not forget, they fail to cite the author alpha and beta with previous for the real authors of it. Okay, using like someone else as a template is under which I'm talking about. Prior to contacting elsewhere, what they did before contacting alpha beta, before contacting elsewhere, alpha beta contacted the editor of journal B directly, who in turn contacted gamma and delta with the substance of the complaint. They picked up a complaint with journal B telling that alpha beta telling to journal B people that gamma and delta have copied our own work and never they have cited. So gamma and delta responded saying that they never gave up. They really did not want to steal alpha and beta work, but just to use it as a template. What a beautiful answer they gave back, the alpha and gamma and delta. They said, gamma and delta responded saying that they really did not want to steal alpha and beta's work, but just use it as a template. And their academic environment is very competitive. They defended themselves. Gamma and Delta defended themselves, telling that the academic environment is very competitive and sometimes researchers use research ideas of previous ones. So in consult again, it continued, they didn't give up. In consultation with the editor of Journal A, the publishing editor contacted the editor of Journal B. So there's a talk between the editors of Journal A and Journal B, saying the situation was unacceptable and demanding that paper B has to be retracted. it should be cancelled completely. So they didn't keep quiet. Alpha and Gamma didn't keep quiet, and therefore asked the editor of Journal A to contact Journal B and cancel off that paper, because the response what they gave was not at all convincing. The editor of Journal B agreed to remove the paper from the website. So finally, the Journal B has to accept, because it was a growing mistake. It was very much growing mistake. So finally, what happened? But his request to Alpha and Beta to review a revised version of the paper from Gamma and Delta was refused. So definitely the Gamma and Delta were thrown back, because they never were convinced, or they were not at all pleasing to Alpha and Beta. Therefore, they had a bad impression in that journal with the editors. So it's just a small story documenting or telling how what could be the scenario of copying things from others without citing. So therefore, what happens? Finally, one has to do? Researcher's responsibility. What should one research has to do? Plagiarism recognized as a form of scientific misconduct. Plagiarism is a misconduct by the US federal government. So it flows down, I was telling it flows down with the respective countries and affirmed as such by virtually all research institutions is a serious matter. It's a serious matter, illegal matter should not take up. Researchers need to take all possible precautions to make sure that they have adequately acknowledged other work and have not inadvertently neglected to include any citations. So definitely we have to acknowledge each and every line of any other work being taken. They must be attentive to acknowledge in all papers on which their names appear, even in the sections that other wrote. So, as members of the research community, they must be alert to plagiarized writing, catching it before publication. Definitely, we should. That is what I was telling. Reiteration, you should keep writing draft 1, draft 2, 10 drafts or 12 drafts it may have. Therefore, you can get a filter. The purity of your research will be floating up. So the retained one will be the plagiarized materials. If possible, reporting it when it appears in the print. By doing so, they help to protect the integrity of the research system. Yes, definitely, which is very important as integrity of research system, which is being addressed by Ms. M. Anderson and Stimac. Now, this is a complete flow, this is a complete flow telling that what happens, what could be the extremes of one undergoing plagiarism, right? Now, you think that I have published a paper to one of the journal and I get review comments from the journal paper, from the editor, right? Let us understand this flow chart, and this is also picked up from the elsewhere. So, what to do if you suspect plagiarism? Suspected plagiarism in submitted manuscript. Definitely everyone we know that when we submit, we get a document as a manuscript. This manuscript will be taken by the editor, and the editor will move this manuscript to the reviews. Reviewers will go through the paper. It's not a day, or they may take days or months to review the paper, and finally they give some conclusions, right? It flows like this. Reviewer informs editor about suspected plagiarism. So reviewer, yeah, I have submitted a paper I submitted the paper to editor. Editor will pass on to the reviewer. So reviewer will not contact me directly. He'll contact the editor. Reviewer informs editor about suspected plagiarism. Thank the reviewer, that is thanking to the reviewer. Check the degree of copying. He'll ask for the check for the degree of copying. There are 4 stages of check of copying. I'm talking about manuscript, clear plagiarism, or unattributed use of large portion of text presented, presented, or as if they were by the plagiarist. Second type, minor copying of short phrases only. no misattribution of data has taken place. So third time redundancy, and fourth time there is no plagiarism, no such problem. Okay. Now in the first case, if we see clear plagiarism, what happens? Contact corresponding author. There is a complete plagiarism which has taken place. Some overlapping, overwriting, copying down has taken place. So what the editor has to do? Editor has to contact the corresponding author in writing, ideally closing signed authorship statement or cover letter stating that submitted work is not original, the author's own and documentary evidence of plagiarism. Yes, they will state this line that it is under plagiarism. The editor will write in a letter or a mail telling the same. If there is a minor copying, what happens? Contact author in neutral terms, average. But this first case will be severe. The second case will be average. In a neutral terms, expressing disappointment, explaining journal procedure, disappointment, journal position. Ask author to rephrase copied phrases with the references. Proceed with review. Yes, some relaxation is given, telling that your citation is incomplete. You have to look back and come back once again. You can resubmit. So redundancy is one of the copying from author's own work, the separate way of presentation of flow chart in the journal paper. And when there's a no problem, then you can directly discuss with the reviewer comments and come up and publish. Further down, when the editor tries to contact the author, what happens? Author responds. Sometimes author may not respond also. He will keep quiet because he knows that I have copied. Yes, Baba, I have copied from somewhere, but I have not cited. I know that. So what happens? Author responds. So unsatisfactorily explanation is being given by the author, which is not convincing to the editor. He says, yes, it's not convincing, whatever the explanation you have become, because massively has copied from the other different research, but not referring them. Correct? When no response is given, author response, giving some explanation. When there is no response, attempt to contact all authors, because there are a number of authors, 1, 2, 3, 4 authors, and when there is no response, they attempt to contact all the authors. Further, when there is no response, what happens from the all other authors? They will not keep quiet. The editor will not keep quiet. They'll contact the institution, concerned institution, and pass on the author's superior or the person responsible for research governance. Again, if there is no response, they keep contacting very frequently. Very frequently will be contacted. And if there is response, unsatisfactory, write to authors or all authors, rejecting submission, explaining the position and expected future behavior. So there will be a letter from the editor telling that you have to give a letter, for the explanation letter has to be given. If the author responds satisfactory explanation given, write to author or all other rejecting the submission or requesting revision, explaining positioning, expected future behavior. So it has to be understood. So different phases one author will undergo if the author has taken up plagiarism. And in writing, it should be considered informing author, superior, and person responsible for research governance. So, inform authors for action, inform reviewer of the outcome. So, there's a extreme cases, and there is a extreme cases where highest plagiarism has taken place, and there is no plagiarism, and moderate also. In highest or the extreme cases, they try to contact and they expect a good explanation for that. So if we lose to give a good explanation for the plagiarism, what has happened, then we will be under severe action, because they may not, in future, they may not accept any other papers to publish, right? And so a moderate would be a fine, because there will be a definite revision of the papers may take. They will say review the paper and come back and resubmit. And definitely when there is no plagiarism, there can be there can be a direct publication. That is with respect to the manuscript. That is with respect to the manuscript. When suspected plagiarism in a published manuscript, if that is a publishing manuscript, that now it is a published manuscript. What happens if it is already been published, which is already been published? Reader informs editor about suspected plagiarism. The reader will inform that this work is already been published. How this can happen? Then there will be a thank giving and all that. Check for degree of copying. Again, the editor will run the paper to the through the checker. Clear plagiarism. Clear plagiarism report has to be taken up. Minor copying. Clear. In the first case, they have found that there is a clear plagiarism, and minor copying has been taken up, like short phrases only, no misattribution of data, nothing has happened, but minor copying has taken place. Here, complete plagiarism has happened. So, contact the corresponding author in writing, ideally by enclosing signed authorship statement stating that work is the author's own, is original author's own, and document evidence of the plagiarism. So they write, the editor will write to the author that it has been already under plagiarism. You have to respond for this. So similarly, in the other case also, they contact authors in neutral terms and they expect an explanation for the same. Discuss publishing correction, giving reference to the original paper. This has to be, this has been omitted. You have to include the same. So further, after once they try to contact the author, the same pattern flows as you find the manuscript. When there is an unsatisfactory explanation, admits the guilty, and there's a satisfactory explanation. And when they respond, when there is no response from the single author, then they contact the multiple authors. They inform the higher authorities also about the what happened with the plagiarism and try to correct it. So thereafter there will no such publications taking place from that same author, or with a minor copying there may be a revision required and then further continue to publish the same. So this is the flow of the publications taking place with respect to the research work or any other work. But this is the exactly, so what happens with the plagiarism when we fail to cite or refer any authors or cite their names, give a credit or acknowledgement to the work which been done already. Now, we have plagiarism prevention with cross-check. This is a definitely existing one. Like I have taken a reference from Springer. They offer cross-check similarity check. We have, obviously, we have many softwares available. So to check an authored work against millions of other published scholarly articles, books, conference papers, dissertations, academic content, and billions of web pages to ensure their virginality. Definitely, there is a lot of Springer is having a cross check. Definitely, it is not only with cross Springer. There are many other publications, journals available where the cross check is given. Where they run our papers which we submit for publication, it will be run under this cross-reference software to identify the matching text, but it cannot on its own identify the plagiarism. So that is not possible with this. So plagiarism detection at an early stage may be helpful. Yes, this is very, very important. Educate authors who are less familiar with the ethics of publishing. Definitely, ethics is the highest priority. Reduce the workload for editors and reviewers if ethical issues are captured at an early stage. If we wish to use authenticate software can be used for as per the Springer publication editor is being using right now. This is the software what they use it. Further down, there's one more flow chart indicating, telling that if are you using someone's idea or theory or work or words, right? If you say no and if you say yes, what happens? Okay, let us understand in this way. This is also taken from one of the references. If you say the work, if I say if the work is not copied from anywhere, it is my own work, no need of any references, I need not author or credit any author because it's own my idea, my publication, my work. It I'll not author or credit any author. If I say yes, I've quoted, I've referred, it is a direct quote. It is a direct quote. You have to quote. Yes, you have copied, you have taken. Idea not copied, it you have taken the work. Then you have to quote them directly. Is it a direct quote? It can be no or it can be yes. Is it an indirect quote? If it is no, is it an indirect quote, paraphrasing or summarizing? It can be anything. If it is paraphrasing or summarizing the text. If it is yes, what happens? Is it a some primary source? If, because the one it is a primary source from where I am taking the work is a primary source. If it is yes, then reference according to required style of the guide. Wherever you are publishing the journal, you have to refer to the style of the references you have to make. There's one more option under is it is an author information that someone else has referenced a secondary source. So even though if it is a primary or secondary, you have to author, you have to credit the source for the same. Is it a direct quote? If it is yes, it is a primary source. If it is a primary source, again you have to say yes and refer according to the required style of the guide. So whichever journal or paper you are publishing. Is it an author information that someone else has referred a secondary? Yes, it's a again both in yes or no, both in yes or no, you have to acknowledge even though it is a primary or secondary source, you have to acknowledge according to the reference of the journal paper where you are publishing. They have different styles, different ways you have to acknowledge. You have to acknowledge the same. Okay, and this is a few technologies to detect and prevent plagiarism. You can go through these plagiarism web links wherein they tell how to detect and prevent more in detail. So that's the technologies which are available nowadays with everywhere. This is Stanford website which has been available, and most of that is Turnitin plagiarism, Turnitin Integrad, Canexism, plagiarism, different websites available. Okay, and thanks for joining, and thank you all. We'll be glad to help you. Yes, I thank.
Any queries from the participants? Ma'am, we have one question. The significance and seriousness of plagiarism is not understood in India.
Yes, a very good question. That is, the significance and seriousness of plagiarism is still not understood. Yes, for that, I would request every teacher and a student to incorporate the knowledge of plagiarism, right? It is only possible to do so when we teacher and we students try to incorporate or give the knowledge of plagiarism, what is its vital role in the research is acting upon. Only then it is day by day it is possible to do so. If I start doing that, inculcating the knowledge of plagiarism in the student, that again as a new concept, as a new subject, the student again will pass on the same to the other student. The next teacher of mine will again pass on the information. There's a chain link we have to develop. So for that, still it is not understood in India. Why? Because that is what I was telling initially. The universities at the educational level, this should be a part of the system. It should be a part of the system. Yes, that should be a part of the system, because plagiarism is a very big word and very serious word, very serious and bitter word for me to tell that. Yes.
Any other
Yes.
questions,
Madam,
participants?
Lata madam, you stop sharing the screen so that you can see the our screen.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Ma'am, you're talking about the citations.
Yes.
How very much important for a normal person to enter into the research field about the citations, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. For that, researcher, like I myself as a guide, if I start guiding a student for a research, or it can be UG or PG student. So we always, the teacher will say that you undergo with the literature survey. And I ask the student to write down, given a paper, I'll ask the student to go through a paper, write down what is, summarize the quantity, the understood concept of the work, what has been carried out by the author has to be written somewhere. That note has to be made, and that has to be written with the author. Finally, the author and the year has to be mentioned together. So finally, when there is a 10 or 20 or 30 papers, such papers have been taken up, and when gone through it, and the student has reproduced in the form of a small report in his book, so that itself will become as a literature survey. So when I'm writing for tomorrow, I'm publishing, we can sit with that literature survey, and wherein I should see that every write up whatever is being made should be entitled with the author and the year. So I'm telling that in the literature survey, this work is being already carried by this person in this year. So but one should be very careful while taking their name and the year, and then the name and the year should be very clear, very specific, very precise, therefore telling that this year this person, this work has been carried away. So with that, we move forward to find out the scope in the work. We move forward to find out the scope in the work. Hope I answered your question, madam.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have one more doubt. Like being
Please.
a faculty, we used to go for PPTs. As usual, we used to refer the book, and we used to take almost all the content, pictures.
Yes. Yes.
However, like it comes under, of course, it is a plagiarism. It's a complete plagiarism. We are just copying the content. We are just explaining. Is it a fair use or what, ma'am? Because in the first slide, normally we used to say presented by, because we are doing a class and just putting a name. But how far it is ethical in that?
Yes, ma'am. There's a one more, like I was talking in the morning. I mean, in the initial slides, there's a plagiarism, copyright, and fair use. So, we are putting up as a textbook or a reference book, we are taking out as a teacher. I'm teaching the concept. So, as a teacher, you are taking the content for teaching purpose. The purpose is very important. The purpose you are, madam, you are meant only for serving the, uh, you are making the student to understand the concept of it. You are taking, you are not publishing it. You are extracting the work. You are not publishing. If you are publishing, then it is a plagiarism. Then it is a plagiarism. But to the end of it, it is always advisable as a teacher to tell that this is being referred from this book, or this reference has to be mentioned, so that students at least they understand why madam is telling this, because let they know that I have not written this article, this is available in this book, it is available in this journal, I have taken from there, it is not purely of my idea, it is available, I am just transferring the information from the book to you only through this form. So we are not publishing, we are teaching them, so it is not a plagiarism, madam.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, yeah, this is a big question in my mind, like a doubt actually.
Okay, ma'am.
Because when you're
Okay.
talking about plagiarism and all, like copying the idea, they said the template, the example.
Yes, yes.
So it should not be correlated to
Yes,
that.
but when it is being published, then it is a plagiarism. But only for the purpose of teaching, madam, if you are taking, it is not plagiarism. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions,
I'll just
please?
check out my many questions of that from the participants. Oh, wow. Yes, so Shaila has appreciated, ma'am, quite useful points for researchers. And some
Thank
people are saying the session is too good, informative. I think most of the people who are doing research and they're saying, yeah, ma'am, we got an idea about the copyright and plagiarism.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all.
I think I'll go for concluding, ma'am. Hope
Okay, ma'am.
we don't have any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
But I
Yes.
request participants, if you have any doubts in future also, you can communicate to Lata ma'am. She's a professor in civil department in SVC.
Yes, most welcome,
So
ma'am. Most welcome. And definitely try to help them with the research work they're taking up. Yes, ma'am. Definitely.
thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us such a wonderful talk on research, plagiarism, copyright, and fair and use, and how to avoid plagiarism. I think the participants are enriched by your words because there is a dilemma that what is right, what is wrong. So people, we have a confusion that what is plagiarism, what is copyright, what we have to do. I think you have given in-depth knowledge by taking a beautiful examples from elsewhere and about a citation. I think we have enriched by your word and as well as the knowledge, ma'am. Thank you for
Yes.
this wonderful talk.
Thank you,
Once
ma'am.
again, I thank you on behalf of the Mechatronics Department, of Management, as well as from the participants and from the organizer side. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being a resource person and giving a talk with a respect to technical, like ethical and moral, how we should be. Because the title,
Yes.
nowhere the title has specified ethical or honest words. But
Yes.
when you get into the topic, it was showing it should be ethical. We don't have a chance to go for unethical. It is like no
Yes.
thought of going for
Yes,
unethical.
ma'am. Yes,
Really
ma'am.
a beautiful talk, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
I
Thank
thank all
you.
the participants for listening. You're curious about to see the slides. It was very interesting slides for that. Thank you so much. And at the
Thank,
outside, I thank all the organizer for making this session grand success. So thank you once again. I request
thank you.
all the participants to join the afternoon session exactly at 1:30. So we have a eminent personalities for each and every session. Try to utilize being a teachers. Once again, I thank you, Lata ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Signing off. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank